The quick story is what Chris didn't fill you in on. I grew up around here, lived in the area most of my life. 9 years ago, in March of 2004, I was on a plane to Fresno, California, right in the center of California, and spent 8 years in exile out there, and just came home this past August, and trying to work my way back into being someone again. And, well, let's not to put a fine point on it, because I'll get to this, but the last few years have been a pretty wild, crazy life trip on a couple of fronts. And about 3 years, actually it was 3 years ago yesterday, Super Bowl Sunday, I started a blog called Fran Fried. And, well, as Chris said, well, I got here just a little too late a month ago to see to get to the point. But I did have a lovely conversation with Mr. Arnott and the lovely and talented Liz Guillorn at the bar. And Liz brought up something that became the jumping point for my latest story in my blog. And, well, Liz mentioned that it was right about the time of the Feast of the Epiphany. And in Christianity, January 6th is the Feast of the Epiphany. If you're not familiar, it commemorates God the Son being revealed to humankind in the form of Jesus. In Western Christianity, it's the Magi coming upon the little manger with the little baby Jesus inside. In Eastern Christianity, it's the day Jesus went to the Jordan to be baptized. Take your pick. For me, though, my Epiphany, my Feast of the Epiphany is January 9th, 3 days later. Not because I'm being a contrarian, but 5 years ago, January 9th, 2008, Fran the daughter was revealed to a fat, balding, schleppy, middle-aged guy with no self-esteem living in the center of California. in a voice that was so loud and crystal clear and resonant that it sounded as if it were coming from out of body. What has always astounded me about life in general is how the most wild, crazy, topsy-turvy, just life-altering things happen in the most mundane of circumstances. In this case, it was on a cold, damp, foggy, dark, typical winter night in the middle of the San Joaquin Valley, and double that because it was right after the holidays. So it was even darker and gloomier, and you're just like, okay, let's get to the spring. It was about 7 in the evening that particular night, and I had just gotten in the door from what was a soul suck of a job. I was an assistant features editor at the Fresno Bee, which was one of California's largest papers. And I'm proud to say my friend Dewada, who's sitting out here with me, came up from New York. She used to work at the Bee. Thanks for coming, honey. Anyway, it was kind of a soul suck of a job. It was the job for which I moved from New Haven in 2004. And I got in the door, and I just really had no energy to do anything. Don't ask me why, because I was working a desk job. It doesn't take a lot to do a desk job. But, I mean, I didn't even have the energy to walk down the hall and turn on Jeopardy. And that says a lot. So, in fact, I walked in my room. I didn't even turn on the light. I threw the coat on the bed, and I just sat there at the foot of the bed and just tried to catch a second wind to just do something. Maybe watch the rest of Jeopardy, go down to the kitchen and make some dinner, start taking down the Christmas shit. And notice how at the end of November, beginning of December, it's, oh, pretty Christmas stuff, and come the first week of January, it's like the Christmas shit. So I'm sitting there on the bed, and I look over, I'm emptying my skull. And I turn to my right, and there's the wall of closets. Now, for the first 5 years I was in Fresno until I got laid off. I was living in a really cool little house. It was not a huge house, but it was a pretty spacious house. It was a renovated late 40s, early 50s house that just screamed California. And it had some wide open spaces, including my bedroom. I had a pretty huge room. And the whole right wall was closets. Now, the one closet was mine. The other closet was just this, just had a few stray items of clothing in it and a box of shoes, which will come into the play later. Maybe not. But and when I moved there, I had a girlfriend at the time who lived on Long Island. She was an elementary school art teacher, or as they say down there, art teacher. And the game plan was that she was going to move out there with me, but she got out there to visit me, and Fresno Unified School District had totally eliminated the elementary school art budget like 3 years before, and we didn't know that, and we didn't even think that could happen, because how the hell do you have a city of 500,000 people and not have an elementary school art budget? Well, the short of it all, besides them paying off several former superintendents, which is where the money was, the short of it was she didn't come out there, we broke up, and I just had this closet with a few stray items of clothing and shoes in it. And for some reason, I turned to that closet, and I was greeted with this huge rush of silence, and I knew where this was going. Or I kind of knew where this was going. This huge blast of silence was the preface to the voice of reason coming to visit me, or as I call it, Hal, because it's really loud and creepy and whispery, and it sounds like Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Except it doesn't call me Dave, thank God about that. And you should have been there the night I was telling my friend Tom about it in New Haven at his Christmas party. And unbeknownst to me, sitting in the living room around the corner from the kitchen was the guy who actually played Dave in the movie Keir Dalia. My life is kind of weird. But I encountered this voice for the first time in September 2003. I was sitting at my desk at the Register. I'd been the entertainment editor and music writer for a long time. But I needed to get off the hamster wheel really, really badly, because it was, as glamorous as it sounds, Chris, it was 2.5 full-time jobs rolled into one. I was putting out the weekend section, I was writing about music, I was doing other stuff, and it was taking a toll on me physically. Not to mention I didn't know how to take care of myself very well. All I knew is I needed to get off the hamster wheel. And I get this email one afternoon from the features editor out at the Bee. And she asked me, well, I'd seen your resume online, I was wondering if you'd be interested in discussing an assistant features editor job. And all of a sudden, the huge blast of silence, and Hal comes in. Okay, it's Fresno. I didn't know anything about Fresno at the time, except agriculture, palm trees, and David Carr, who's now the Giants' backup quarterback, but he was like a Heisman finalist and stud quarterback for Fresno State not too long before. That's all I knew about Fresno. It's the California nobody east of the Sierra knows about, nobody west of the Sierra wants to know about. It's the Waterbury of California, okay, essentially. Except that it makes Waterbury look like Yale by comparison. Except that there are, I will get back to this later, but there are some serious pockets of intelligence and creativity there.
Hey, Fresno ain't all bad. I've been to Fresno.
This is the man from Berkeley. Good comments. The man who's taught 3/4 of New Haven how to play guitar.
Well, you.
Except me, I just sucked. Short, stubby fingers, and 2.5 full-time jobs that kind of not conducive to learning how to play guitar. Well, anyway, that was the voice of reason. I heard that for the first time in September of 2003. 6 months later, I'm on a plane to Fresno out of Bradley, and getting there about 2 or 3 days ahead of the moving ban. Starting this whole brand new life, and going on a trip that I had no idea where I was going and where I was going to be going. So I'm sitting on the bed, and I'm looking at the closet, and I feel this huge blast, even larger blast of silence than I did back in 2003. And all of a sudden I hear Hal, and Hal sounded, I was sitting on the bed, and Hal was so loud and so resonant and so crystal clear, he sounded as if he were coming from right over here, and he says to me, "Can you do this?" And that's all it asked. And I knew what it was asking. It was asking essentially, well, can you transition genders? Can you spend the rest of your life living as a woman? That's as simple as that. 40 years of anxiety, worry, fright, and any other bad mojo thing you can think of, like a machete through a Gordian knot. And I turned around to Hal and I said, "What are you, fucking nuts? You're nuts. You have a respectable job, you work at a newspaper, and you work with high school kids. And all it's going to take down here is one parent equating gender, homosexuality, and pedophilia." And now let me backtrack and tell you what I'm talking about here. I was working at one of California's largest newspapers. I had a respectable job. I did not know at the time. I mean, at one point or another, I counted six editors and writers in the newsroom who were gay, including 2 guys in my cubicle quad. So I knew that they would be fine with gay. Trans, I don't know if they would be really cool with it. As I found out later, there was a woman who worked down in the business office named Johnny Pettit, Jonni. She was a genetic female. But she had a husband named David who, talk about badass stuff. He was a bombardier navigator on B-52s in Vietnam. He was an Air Force veteran. And about 10, 11 years ago, and sat down with Johnny and said, "Hon, I'm Angela." And went through the transition, went through the full surgery, and they're still happily married. And I'm not telling tales out of school because they've had a TV documentary done about them. But yeah, it was, I mean, I didn't know about this at the time because she worked in the business office, I was upstairs in the newsroom. And basically to be transgender is to encounter a lot of unknowns and a great fear of the unknown. You're afraid of, you're afraid of ridicule. I grew up with enough "you faggot" growing up in Prospect. You grow up with fear of losing your family, your fear of losing your friends, your fear of losing your job, although in California that's illegal, as it is in Connecticut now, thank God. Now if you just get a fucking job. And it's also fear of violence. Trans people, on the whole, as a group, suffer the greatest percentage of violent crimes against them, the greatest murder rate in the country, especially if you're a trans woman of color. But which I'm not, of course. But still, I mean, it's to be trans is to deal with a lot of great unknowns, and this is all unfolding in zip drive opening in a split second here. And the religion, the equating gender, homosexuality, pedophilia thing. Well, Fresno, as I was saying, was the Waterbury of California. But it's a very right-wing city. Sometime around 1980, during the quote-unquote Reagan Revolution, it had flipped from being a working-class Democratic farming city to a Republican stronghold. It was one of the places where the Yes on 8 campaign won in 2008, which is one of the reasons gay marriage is illegal in California right now. It's that type of city. I mean, there are pockets of creativity and great intelligence, as I was saying. I mean, Audra McDonald is from Fresno. The previous poet laureate, Philip Levine, has spent many, many years in Fresno. He taught at Fresno State. David Masumoto, who's an author who was just appointed to the National Council of the Arts, he's out there. And as Mr. Bellwood can attest to, because that's where I met him 3 years ago. Fresno is also home to the largest fringe festival west of the Mississippi, the Rogue Festival. So if you feel like going out to Fresno the last week of February, 2 weeks of great performances. So Fresno was a pretty intelligent place, but there's also a lot of dull eyes, a lot of vacant stares, a lot of lack of questioning things, and a lot of religion. Name your religion, it's there. Lots of churches, lots of worship entertainment centers, registered trademark. Just a lot of, it's a lot of people's twisted, warped interpretations of God. So I'm thinking it is not a stretch. Now, most of the kids I worked with at the Bee, I worked with about 24 of the most gifted and talented writers in the Central Valley. I edited a page called Back Talk, which was the back page of the Sunday feature section, and I got to pay it forward for the first time in my life, it was the most rewarding part about being out in Fresno. I was their editor and mentor, and I'm still friends with several of them now that they've reached young adulthood. But I figured most of the kids I dealt with were pretty liberal. But I was afraid of what the parents would do, and not knowing how the bee would react and not knowing how parents would react. I'm like, okay, I'm opening up some Pandora-sized box of worms here. So I've got all this stuff whizzing around in my mind, but the voice of reason shot back at me in that, keep in mind, I'm telling you this now, and this is the zip file version that I've just unopened, but this is all happening in real time in like a split second. And as I'm saying all this out loud, as I'm screaming at Hal, the voice of reason comes back to me, but it doesn't sound like Hal, it sounds like a real human now. And it comes back at me and goes, look, you're 46, you're more than halfway past your life expectancy, and you should be dead already. So you're going to find out for real, or you're going to be fat, miserable, and in the closet the rest of your life. And the you should be dead part already, I had been 7 months removed at that point from a very vicious, brutal, wicked case of sleep apnea that almost killed me.
Oh boy.
That was my parting gift from New Haven. This had started when I was at the register, and I didn't know how to take care of myself, and I was getting 3 hours a night sleep anyway. And, it all exploded when I got to Fresno and got off the hamster wheel. So back in the spring of '07, it had gotten to the point where had I let it go unchecked for another 2-3 months, maybe 1 or 2 months, I probably would have ended up like Divine or Jerry Garcia or Reggie White. Those are the 3 most famous cases of sleep apnea-related heart failure deaths. And I found it pretty funny because I had done drag, I had been a music writer, and I'd been a sports writer, so I covered all my bases. Morbid but true. So I had just started the treatment. I had started getting back to being a human being when all this hits me now, sitting on the bed. But they do call the voice of reason for a reason, So all I could do was just sit there and let it process for about 5 seconds. And in the meantime, I'm starting to think about how my friends and my family are going to deal with this. I left a lot of friends back here. I had a lot of friends back in Fresno. I had the sports crew I played poker with. I had people in the Tower District who just knew me as this fat guy with the do-rag and the music t-shirts and New Orleans Saints jerseys and stuff like that. And I had, I didn't know how I was going to go over with my devout Catholic parents back here in Prospect. All these things that, normal, like non-trans people ever had to think about. So I'm starting to process this, and all I could do is just sit there and go, okay, this is where I'm going. So how the hell do I do this? 5 years later, I still can't comprehend that I really did this all. I sure as hell do know what I did, but it's just been really astounding to look back. Here I am. My circle of friends in Fresno exploded once I came out, because not only was I a hell of a lot better looking, but I actually had something resembling self-esteem for the first time in my life, and I was living an honest life. And my girlfriends totally accepted me into the club, which was the biggest thing, because you just don't know. They could think you're just like playing being a boy or something, or playing being a girl. And I'm like, no, it's for real. My shoe closet got a hell of a lot better. And my shoe closet. Learned how to do my face so that if you had not known me, if you had seen me walking in here, maybe you didn't even know. Well, now you know, but you know what I'm saying. Passing is a big important thing if you're out in the everyday world. When it came time to go on Facebook a couple of years ago at the urging of my dearest friend Paula, who's also here tonight, I just kind of left my profile out there for everybody to see and just kind of process on their own. And my circle of friends back here exploded. I I was thankfully, I wrote an op-ed piece for the Register a year and a half ago, and out of that, I was friended by the woman who's become my nurse practitioner since I've been home. And the coolest part of it all is, joblessness sucks. There's no way of getting around that. I've come tantalizingly close since I've been back, and I've been happy to know that I've gotten a couple of big interviews at big places where they knew about me going in and it was no big deal. They didn't hire me, but that's coming. Either that or a sugar mama, I hope one of the two. But yeah, the coolest part was, it took about 20 months from the time I was able to, from the time I sat on the bed to the time I had my epiphany, to the time I was able to have the phone call to my parents 3,000 miles away and tell them, well, I'm not just in between jobs, Ma. And it took 14 months of weirdness and hell and trials and tears and all that from that point, but they're finally down with me. I'm living with them right now. They get the pronouns wrong, but they've got their hearts right. And, anyway, that is my Feast of the Epiphany, which I celebrated by sitting at the dining room table having a bowl of chili with my father. But, so that is my Feast of the Epiphany, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you for your indulgence.